The Western world for most of the last century has seen the mind and body as two distinct entities, like a machine complete with replaceable independent parts, with no connection whatsoever to the mind. In the past decade, strong evidence has been accumulated regarding the benefits of mind-body therapies. One of the pioneers at the cutting edge of this field is Dr. Beverly Kune, whom I recently interviewed. Good morning, Dr. Kune. May I start off with, how long have you been in practice and what is your specialty?
I'm a mind-body integrative therapist. I work in Santa Fe, New Mexico. I have been in private practice since the 80s. And I really specialize in that mind-body interface where the two intersect. And for me, it's very important that I do that. I have a large clientele. They come to see me for a variety of reasons. But the one thing they all have in common is that they feel very, very stuck. They have behaviors they can't quite shift, even though they know they need to do it differently. They get stuck in perceptions of the world, different kinds of filters, different emotional states. Sometimes they're stuck physically as well, because I do have dual licensure. I'm a clinical counselor. I'm also a licensed body worker and a naturopathic doctor. And to me, the body is like the psyche turned inside out. And so it's very, very important to dive beneath just our mind, the front part of our mind, to really begin to get people unstuck from these patterns. Otherwise, the drive engine, so to speak, they lie beneath our conscious awareness. And just because we know in our mind how we need to do it differently doesn't mean that we can. So one of the things I specialize in is helping people find ways to get to these deeper levels so that they can shift out of these non-productive patterns and become more free to be who they really are, to find that blueprint of self and to actually live it and actualize it.
In the book that you're about to publish, you talk about spheres of relationships playing an important role in health. Would you elaborate on that topic?
Well, we live in relationship to ourself, and I think of terms of spheres of relationship. So ideally we're the core of that, and then there's our relationship to ourself, and that's such an important part of healing on any level. And then there's, of course, relationship to our families, to our partners, to the people that we really love, and then outward to our friends, our circles of friends, and to the people we work with, and on, community, and so on. There's also our relationship to how we relate to obstacles, to challenges. So there's so many different ways of thinking of relationships. Are we able to meet challenges? Are we able to kind of rise above the I can't that I hear a lot of in my office, to find that place where we're really centered in ourselves and we know we can?
Now, one of the chapters in your forthcoming book relates to trauma. Would you please define that term?
You know, trauma is a big part of my work, and I have come to realize that we all have trauma, not necessarily trauma with a big T, but any place where we're not allowed to really be fully ourselves, where we feel like we're being kind of washed over by outside or external circumstances. It's a catch-all word, and essentially what it means is that we develop, through our nervous system, through our neuroconscious, we develop ways of surviving through that trauma. And sometimes to do that, we wind up shutting off parts of ourselves, and we develop these automatic strategies for getting through the world. And they work perhaps at the time when we really needed them, but the difficulty is we tend to carry them with us into our world, into all those spheres of relationship, and they really affect the way in which we respond to the world. It's more like we are just reacting over and over again in different versions of that same initial safety response. And so trauma is really important because it helps you have a bigger lens to look at the nervous system. How resilient is the nervous system? Right? It's really important. And how resilience means how quickly can the nervous system reset after disturbance. And a lot of people, most of the people that I see, their nervous systems lost the ability to reset. They can find a way to relax, they can do their meditation, but then they go back into a trigger situation, whatever that is. Sometimes the triggers are really subtle, but bam, they're just off and running back in those old survival patterns.
You know, your book is entitled Healing from the Inside Out. What exactly does that mean?
It's really important that we learn how to heal from the inside out. And I see that as a culture, as a society, we typically go to top-down healing. So top-down healing for me is you go to a therapist, or you read a book, or you go to a doctor and you take a pill, or any of those different variations, to really change what's going on through the cortex on down, right? You're looking outside of yourself, or you're looking to come up with a different epiphany. Next time I'm in this situation, I'm going to do X instead of Y. The problem with that is too often in those situations we wind up doing Y because it's triggered back to those same kind of deeper patterns that we get stuck in. The other problem is that when we're relying on something outside of ourselves, we never really fully can find a way to find our own true map, right? We have an authentic map, our blueprint of self, and we also have a map based on all these things that we sort of swallowed as we were growing up, cultural, societal, familial, etc., etc. And I call that our stuff, you know? And we're governed by it until we learn to really say, this is that old map, that stuff. It's really got a lot of landmarks on it, but really those landmarks aren't true. And that allows us then to begin to separate out and to find out who we are authentically, right? What that map really needs to be. So when we even go and do medication from an allopathic standpoint, we're just changing, we're sort of tweaking a little here and tweaking a little there and disrupting our ability to really learn to do it differently. And of course, as we all know, too often people don't even go and get medical prescriptions. They do drugs of varying kinds, alcohol, cigarettes, food, etc., all the kinds of addictions we all know, to somehow reset. I think instinctively we know as a people, you know, where I am, I'm a little off balance. And so we seek something from outside of ourselves to kind of put ourselves back in balance, but then we become dependent on that. And our system never really learns to really do it on our own.
You mentioned having an expansive toolbox for your clients. Now, what does that entail?
The way I work isn't really based on any particular model. I feel like everybody that I work with has a particular dance that they need to get to where it is that they want to go. Right? Different people, different story, even though if the presenting story looks the same, the story of how they got there and the story of how they need to move to where they want to go is different. So my toolbox is really big. I use a lot of different modalities. I'm blending body approaches, mind approaches, a lot of more cutting edge, you could say, EFT, somatic experiencing, specialized kinesiology. I work with varying ways to just help us become more of who we are.
So there you have it, an exciting new frontier in the science of mind-body relationships. We'll keep you in touch with Dr. Kune on this exciting area of health.